I want to start off by saying how important this moment is to exchange and to better understand the needs of people on both continents and to really see how we can better cooperate and collaborate with the Gulf states. Coming from Egypt, I once again am reminded that I think we need to, as we look at people and the way in which we can ensure people can be both protected, that we actually can also transform our economies, that we think through how we can better align also in some of our cultural differences and our belief structures, because I think this will be very important as we move forward. And why do I say that? This is the 50th anniversary of The Limits to Growth, a seminal publication which the Club of Rome published in 1972. And in The Limits to Growth, we very much indicated that during the 2020s, we would start to see some very key tipping points. The scenarios pointed to such. Those tipping points are happening today. If we look at COVID, if we look at climate, and if we look at the compound effects also with conflict. And the reason I bring that up is that what's been interesting now as we renew and rethink through the system dynamic modeling that we integrated actually in our Limits to Growth model, which very much indicated that we needed to very much shift our consumption patterns. So the essence of how we can protect people and stay within the planetary boundaries and really think through prosperity has to take into consideration how we consume and how we live on this planet. The latest report, which we've just published actually in September, which is Earth for All, a Survival Guide for Humanity, points to the importance of understanding social tipping points, and hence again why it's so important then to think through how we work and create the right environments for people to thrive, not just survive. If you look globally at the way in which well-being has systematically decreased, even as wealth has increased, it again shows us, and this is our social index, that actually we need to really rethink the way in which we look at GDP growth and the way in which we look at growth overall. So that for me is the essence first of thinking through how do we then collaborate from an economic perspective? How do we address our supply chains, our value chains, and how do we address people within that? Let me come to then the way in which we need to start thinking through this. The social tipping points is one that actually will really start to aggravate the way in which we live on this planet and we could potentially thrive. We're looking at mass movements, we're looking at geopolitical stresses, we're looking at market forces, and we're looking at technological disruption. And if they're all pointed in the right direction, then actually we could come towards zero poverty, zero carbon use, zero actually biodiversity loss, and zero inequality, including zero pandemics. So taking that into account, we need to start addressing the elephant in the room. What is the elephant in the room? The international efforts to fight the climate crisis and other environmental crises, and the way in which we look at Industry 5.0 remains focused on the supply side and technological solutions. If we're going to really shift, we need to think not only of greening the supply side, but also we need to put in place targets that will address poverty and inequality at the same time. Our 5 core turnarounds that come out of our system dynamic model in actually this new report, Earth for All, a Survival Guide for Humanity, very much shows that we need to look at first poverty, secondly inequality, third empowerment of women in particular, so access to education, in order to ensure that we don't continue to have population growth, and we've just passed the 8 billion mark, that will create such a stress on our planetary boundaries that actually we will, as Sharon Burrows has clearly indicated, the former executive secretary of ITUC, the International Trade Union Confederation, that we have no jobs on a dead planet. So let's very much take that as the central issue and the anchor of our thinking. So addressing poverty and inequality is key when we think of the way in which we look at the workforce. We must also stop ignoring the inherent wastefulness of our production and our consumption, so shift from just a production-focused discussion when it comes to our economy and when it comes to our jobs, and think through what does consumption mean, especially in the North and in those countries that are actually emerging economies. And then put in place demand side measures that get us closer to the essential questions of responsibility and equity. So in my role as chair of the Economic and Societal Impacts of Research and Innovation Expert Group at the European Commission, we've been really thinking through what does this look like. And we actually published Industry 5.0 as a brief to look at a new way of looking at Industry 5.0. But the first thing we asked ourselves is, how do we protect people, planet, and prosperity, first of all? Secondly, how do we prepare better for the next crises? And thirdly, how do we transform the society, economy, and regenerate the planet at the same time? If we take, within a European Green Deal context, where we are in Europe, that does mean that we need to rethink our research and innovation and our missions approach and make sure that it is truly targeted towards ensuring that we are protecting people, ensuring that we are protecting the planet, and ensuring that we are enhancing prosperity, and that our economy is servicing these aims. So we will need to go beyond the current economic construct of GDP into other indicators which address our social needs and our environmental needs. And what we've done in terms of Industry 5.0 is then looked at what does that construct mean in terms of improving the safety and the well-being of people, reducing the cost due to resource efficiency, empowering workers, creating a competitive industry that is attracting the best talent, adapting training for evolving skills, creating a competitive edge, but that again is thinking, firstly, not just about profit and not just about power dynamics, but about prosperity for more people, and then really creating those solutions that we need. So that means that we need to be responsible at the value chain level and look at the ecosystem. We need to be regenerative and circular in design. We need to make sure that we're self-sustaining and adapting and less fragile. And we see that right now in terms of our unholy dependency on Russia and the way in which it is truly shaking up our food and our energy value chain and creating energy poverty here in Europe and inflationary impacts. We need to make sure that we start to look at a decentralized actual market and think through what that looks like in terms of local production for local consumption. And what then will be the trade impacts that we may have, and how do we better communicate and better partner with our neighbors, whether it be the Gulf region or whether it be Africa or whether it be some of our other trading partners. We need to look at digitalization, but having grown up in California, I'd like to be very clear. This is digitalization with purpose, to live within the planetary boundaries, to make sure that actually, again, digitalization is servicing people, planet, and prosperity at the same time. And then making sure that we put in place the right monitoring and measuring what matters, having regenerative metrics and regulatory frameworks. So I will close with the following, that when we think about Industry 5.0, we also need to think about Governance 5.0. We need to think about Economy 5.0. But if we think through governance, this does take a totally new role from government. It means that we need a strong policy coherence, shaping the markets and tilting the playing field, a policy approach that moves towards co-design and co-determination, takes into consideration research and innovation and our responsibility also to the way in which we ensure that we have the right skill sets for the right people, and we have the right educational system that empowers people to be able to be part of this new Industry 5.0 vision. That we have corporate governance 5.0, social governance, embed systemic transformation in transition pathways, skills and mindsets for social adaptive businesses, and radical intersectoral collaboration as the new normal. So our thinking at both ESIR, so the Economic Societal Impacts Research and Innovation Expert Group, but also at the Club of Rome and the work that we've been doing also on the Systems Compass, is that if we look at a new Industry 5.0 perspective, we need to truly go back and see where are the dysfunctionalities of our current economic model. How does it continue to push for neoliberal profit-seeking approaches rather than think through how we can truly protect people, prepare for the next crises, and create resilience in our social, environmental, and economic systems, and ensure that we truly transform to service all three at the same time. Thank you very much.
Happy to hear from Sandrine earlier that she highlighted a couple of very critical issues, the social tipping point, and she spoke about building an education system to support the Industry 5.0. And coming from an education background, I would like to maybe emphasize on that part more. The Industry 4.0 have really made a big impact in all business sector by using machine, robots, IoT to change the business model, to increase proficiency, and to rely more on those machines. And we've seen the transition happening now toward 5.0 by integrating human to be part of this and becoming more essential rather than relying more on the robotics and the machines. And the social tipping point that Sandrine have talked about is what really making that kind of a transition in the 5.0. And it's becoming more critical now. How do we integrate a human and to become more superior on machines, on top of the machines, and to become the element of a human engagement in many business sectors? We realize it is more and more critical. Now, this is where the social impact is coming. This is where the transition is happening. And this is where we have seen, in fact, this generation of worker today, they're not only about making a living by having a pay and whatever that work environment is like. They are more keen about the well-being, about quality of life, and how can they contribute by their talents and their jobs. So, and we've been hearing that, in fact, with the younger generation more, it's not just about getting a job and getting a pay like the old days. So they're more keen about how do we be part of this socially and how we have quality of life and better well-being rather than just performing a certain task. And this is where I think it's all coming as part of the Industry 5.0. Now, if we look at from the education perspective, we've seen how COVID-19 impacted our education system and how the transition happened and the usage of technology happened seamlessly in many countries, and the education was not interrupted to a certain extent. But we've seen also the impact that the online is not the greatest way of delivering education system, because the online through a 2D Zoom screen, for example, have caused Zoom fatigue among our students, students have not really learned much by that kind of interactivity that we were hoping for from the education system. But this is why we are moving in the Industry 5.0 and bringing more engagement of the students, even digitally, and how do we utilize technology to a more higher level. That's why in many of our education system, what I call it now, we are moving from university to metaversity. And the concept of metaversity is to engage students socially, interactively, in a 3D virtual world, so that they can have a better learning and they can have a better, not only from the theoretical perspective, but also from the work placement and the internship perspective that can be engaged and integrated into the learning environment. So this have really moving very fast forward, and we've seen how our students today are excited to go back to school and to universities, not because they are excited about learning, but because they want to meet their colleagues, they want to engage with their friends, they want to have that kind of human engagement. And this is what was missing during the online period or the online phase. So with the post-COVID-19, I think the concept of metaversity is becoming more and more engagement, and the virtual world can provide more social interaction with our students, with our faculty. But I think in the metaverse world, we can build the dream campus we were hoping, or we were imagining, for both for our students and for our teachers and faculty, where students can walk in as an avatar in a campus with their friends, attending classes, and where teachers can teach simultaneously together the theoretical part and the lab, for example, part, converting instantly to a certain work environment and gaining that competencies and skills that our students would need to benefit from. So this is where the 5.0, Industry 5.0 is coming in. So it's similar from Industry 4.0 to 5.0. I look at it from education perspective, is from delivering our instruction through online to delivering our instruction through a metaverse world. And this will maintain a high level of engagement among our students, our faculty, and will prepare the workforce for the competencies that we think it's becoming more and more critical with the changes is being introduced with the Industry 5.0 and with the changes of the technology in parallel, because we know technology is not it's not one target, it's a moving target. It's continuing every 6 months. We have a new technology, but we always think that the generation Gen Z, they are, because digitally native, they are digitally competent. They are not digitally competent. Yes, they are digitally native, but not necessarily competent. That's why those competencies need to be built in through enhancing the education system, through the use of metaverse platform, and engaging students through the applied nature of the programs, of the type of jobs that they will have in the future. And more critically is to bring the excitement level among our students to learn, because this is something we've been seeing lately, that our students being switched off from the traditional way of learning. They want to do more technology-related, hands-on, applied nature. That's what makes that learning is more kind of an excitement, and it triggers their interest, and it makes them learn better and make them more qualified graduates and more qualified to contribute to the Industry 5.0. I will stop here, and maybe we'll hear more from, I'm sure, from Alessandra and other speakers, and we will carry on the discussion as we go on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullatif. Indeed, Alessandra, from your point of view and the point of view of SMEs, I mean, you are the largest employer, SMEs are the largest employer throughout Europe, and preparing the workforce is an essential step.
It is an essential step, but it's also very challenging. So what we are seeing from the work of every day is really that we need to change the mentality of people. So how these people approach and interact with the technologies. So I actually appreciated both interventions from the panelists, because they have touched upon very important points that I would like perhaps to take again and elaborate further from my point of view. We have talked about governance 5.0, so to extend the idea and vision of Industry 5.0 to a largest vision of economy and governance 5.0. But I would like to relaunch this, so why don't we think to a society 5.0? Because in my everyday work as project manager in the digital skills and smart cities context, I really see the needs of making people, citizens, aware of the transformations that the digitalization processes are bringing to our everyday life, not only in the workplace. So how do we interact with digital technologies? What's the impact of this interaction on our well-being, our emotional cargo, and our stress? So I think we should really consider these changes and these disruptions in a holistic way, and really consider people at the center of this process. Digitalization is really affecting our lives every day. Let's just think, we talk with artificial intelligence systems, we interact every day on social media, but are we really aware of the consequences of the impact of this interaction? And this relates to what a professor was saying about, for instance, Gen Z being digital native but not digital competent. So being digital competent is an extra step, and it really requires to understand what a digital technology, a digital tool is, and to understand how my use is going to affect my life and everyday life. So I would like to start by expanding the concept of Industry 5.0 to really a society 5.0, because at the end, what SMEs are made for, what businesses are made for is people. And if people will not accept these changes, these transitions, then I'm not sure we will be able to make the most out of it and to seize all the opportunities that these changes are bringing to our society. So I really welcome the interventions of both panelists, because I think we are really aligned on seeing this process as something very holistic and not only focused on the workplace and supply chains. Thank you.
So indeed, yes, we have already touched upon quite a few of the aspects that we can now maybe dive into a little deeper. But how ready do you think we are, both in the GCC and in the EU? Maybe I'll start with you, Alessandra, from the EU side, and then I will turn to you, Dr. Abdullatif.
Well, how ready we are, I wouldn't know for sure. I wouldn't be able to give like a definite number. But I think that we have realized the opportunities that these changes can bring to the society, to rethink ourselves as a society, as a European society. What I can see in the businesses and the European small and medium-sized enterprises is that there is really a will to embrace digitalization. People, business owners, workers want to understand what this Industry 5.0 is. But I also see, of course, some difficulties in having the right set of competencies and skills to actually being able to accept and embrace the transformation. And in fact, education plays here a crucial role. I really welcome the initiatives of the European Commission, for instance, throughout the Digital Europe program, because I see that they are really focusing and insisting on creating those training services and training pathways that really meet the needs of the industries and really try to equip the workers with the essential knowledge to not only to passive use a technology, but also to interact with the technology, and by providing, for instance, feedback or providing expertise to really change and tailor the use of the technology to the needs of the businesses. So I see that there is understanding of this, but of course, equipping people with the right competencies to be able to do that is taking long, and it's a long process. We are trying as European Union to accelerate this, but yes, if I would say like one challenge is definitely to being able to educate the people as fast as the development of the technologies goes.
So it's a matter of catching up rather than anticipating at this stage.
Yeah, at this stage, yes.
Dr. Abdullatif, what about the GCC countries?
Well, trying to be ready, I don't think that is something easy that can happen, because we are, again, working with a technology that is indeed a moving target. And always from education perspective, is always behind any business sector. And when it comes to the competencies and skills that will be integrated into the education system, because the educations tend to wait until looking what is set of skills that is needed and competencies, what technologies are there, and then we try to integrate that into our curriculum, into our contents, and to prepare our graduates for that. By that time, imagine that the technology have changed. So there will always be a lag behind when it comes to education system to prepare them to the immediate requirements of the job market. And let's take the advantage, for example, or a test during the COVID-19. COVID-19 have done a great favor for educationalists from perspective that it accelerated the use of technology more rapidly into our education system. Yes, we have implemented in the past, prior COVID-19, many technological tools. We use flipped classrooms, blended learning, MOOCs, for example. It was there. But when COVID-19 hit, we have to immediately do the transition. And it was a test that can we do it? Can we still continue our education? Can we deliver? And in fact, many in GCC, especially in the UAE, because we have a good, solid infrastructure from IT perspective, it was possible. But from education as a faculty, teachers, and the students themselves who are recipient of this, it was not easy because it takes time until the pedagogy of delivery of instruction matures, and it takes time until our faculty and our teachers, they master the way of delivering instructions through a 2D screen rather than it's a face-to-face engagement. It happened, and the improvement happened. But when we talk about the post-COVID-19, again, we bring in the critical element which we realized that was missing during COVID-19, which is the social elements, the human, the face-to-face engagement, to be integrated within our education system. So that's why we've seen many universities, not here only in the GCC, but globally, introduce the hybrid model where students can come to class online and attend some labs physically on campus. But that still did not serve the 100% purpose. That's why we're going into the post-COVID-19 with more into the metaverse concept, where 3D, virtual, and this is where the technology bring an added value to a higher level to be integrated into our education system. So this readiness, it's not there yet because the technology is keep changing continuously, and it's bringing more of an added value. Many, again, business sectors and many business models have changed and to adapt the technology more efficiently. Education system tend to be behind, but it's to catch up with those kind of set of skills. It will take time, but it will continue to challenge us as an educationist and as an academician to cope with the changes that's happening around us and with all the challenges that's been mentioned through the discussion.
Sandrine, I could see you were nodding at what Dr. Abdullatif was saying. So clearly you have some comments to add to this.
Yeah, thank you, Florence. I have comments to add to both the last speaker and what Dr. Abdullatif has been saying, because I think it's really important to take into consideration, absolutely, that we need to think about a society 5.0. And coming to the transformation and the learnings from COVID, not only did we transform from an educational perspective, but we transformed from a societal perspective. We're so often told that transformation is not possible. And yet when push comes to shove, we were forced to transform in a very short time period, for good or for bad. I mean, there were some very bad transformations. The fact that obviously we all felt that our health and our security was at risk, that we needed to ensure that we had access to vaccines, that we needed to wear a mask. These are all very strong impacts on society. But it also told us and taught us some very important lessons. One, that government can step up when it needs to. It does make mistakes, but at times it actually does put in place the right plans and the right actions. And we need to think through, what does that mean if we are going to be faced with future crises? Two, that communities can transform. And that, as was so clearly said, our educational system can transform. Again, it wasn't perfect, and there was a lot of pushback and a lot of deep feelings of separation, of failure from students, because students really did have a hard time, even though many of them were able to call in, to Zoom in, to use digitalization as a way to continue to get taught and to learn. But of course, many students also suffered from the lack of personal contact, face-to-face education, etc. So all of these learnings are fundamental. So your question, which is so crucial, is, are we ready? No, we're not 100% ready. What we need to do, though, and this is the problem as we now are facing so many other crises, especially in Europe with the Ukrainian invasion on our doorstep, is to think through, how do we now plan for the long term? How do we build resilience within our systems, our educational system, if this happens again, to ensure that we have a hybrid system that continues to empower students to be educated, but to also feel that they're part of a community and not isolated in a room by themselves, feeling very separate, which creates all kinds of other issues, mental illness, countless suicide attempts, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to think through that process very carefully. But we also need to think through what happened during COVID in terms of our workforce. The more and more people that are actually working from home. What does this mean in terms of the loss of so many working spaces inside cities? How do we rethink our cities? Because many people are no longer actually working in office spaces, or now have really tasted the benefits of a hybrid system and don't want to go into work 5 days a week. This has really called into question our societal fabric and the way it was constructed in the 20th century. So we need to rethink, and Society 5.0 is perfect for that. What does society look like as it's going to be faced with future crises, and we have to plan in chaos? How do we put in place the structures that we need from an economic, market, financial perspective, educational perspective, workforce perspective, in order to ensure that we can continue to thrive? I think that is the key question.
Yes, indeed. And we were talking about anticipating or catching up, and policies have to play their part as well. I mean, policies also have to anticipate at some point. I'd like to continue on that topic, and Alessandra, concretely, I mean, it's often said that the jobs that are going to be available in 30 years, half of them don't exist yet. How do you think concretely this Industry 5.0 approach is going to change the way we work?
Well, I can start from a concrete example from my work. So I remember last year submitting a proposal for a project that was calling for a skills observatory for Industry 5.0. So this project was requiring as a mandatory step to have a partner that was an expert in social science and human behavior. So this requirement, these mandatory requirements, I think tells a lot of the direction that Industry 5.0 workforce is going. So it's not going to be only the worker interacting with an AI machine, with an AI system, or operating with a machine, but it's also going to be assessed the impact of this interaction, as I was saying, and the effects that this have on the worker and the perception of the worker in the workplace. So this is the direction of Industry 5.0 jobs. And if we talk about the skills, like the set of skills that the Industry 5.0 worker needs to be equipped with, I can perhaps sharing insights from another project that I'm following, where we are building curricula for workers of the future. And it's not going to be a set of skill which is only technical or which includes only hard skills, but soft skills are taking actually a very important and crucial role. So you will see curricula that are always demanding for modules and skills such as entrepreneurship, being able to think in a circular way, in a sustainable way. Cybersecurity will be crucial, fundamental, will be a must-have for every and each worker, because in the moment you interact with a digital machine, you need to be aware of the risk that this can have on your production processes, and all these kind of transversal skills that can then be adapted to different jobs. So what I see in the Industry 5.0 workers, let's say, of the future is really the ability of thinking in an entrepreneurial way, of applying a business perspective to even technical processes, because I think that only this kind of approach to a task, to a job, can be beneficial not only for then the business itself, but also for the working culture and the work environment in the place.
Dr. Abdullatif, what do you think?
Well, I think it is with Industry 5.0, we need to rethink the way we run our education system. The segregation that's happening between schools, universities, and workplace, this is what will keep causing this problem. Because for the past maybe 20 or 30 years, we've always been speaking about the gaps between graduates, college graduates, and the work and competencies that is required. And this gap keep increasing. No matter how much efforts we put separately on an education system to bring those competencies and skills for our students, it will never be reaching that. Because why? Because again, the technology is moving so rapidly. The set of skills are really changing on a daily basis that is required for any business sector. So I think it is time that we need to rethink to integrate more industry with our schools and universities. How do we bring industry inside our schools? How do we bring our schools inside the industry? How do we ensure our graduates, they are more into the lifelong learning? That's part of it. How do we ensure that they are meeting those standards? Because no matter how much efforts we put together, it will take time. There will always be a gap. Alessandra, she highlighted a very important type, which is the soft skills. Yes, indeed. The soft skills is what we need to embed in our students and to ensure that they have the patience and the tolerance to be able to learn, to adapt to the work environment, to adapt to the new changes. But more importantly, also to keep in mind that we have to kind of graduate professional learners, in a sense that learning does not end at a certain degree or a certain level. It's a continuous, especially with the new changes that we are living today, with all these technologies, with Industry 5.0. So the relation between academic institutions and industries need to be revisited. That kind of segregation will always cause that kind of a gap of a skill set between students and when they graduate, and between the industry requirements. And this is something that needs to be seriously looked at. There's some good models, by the way, at the global level. And we know, many of us are also aware, for example, of the dual system in Germany that integrate the university students with industry, and to ensure that they work and study at the same time, and that make them more qualified and prepared. And that helps, but not many countries are adapting to that kind of model, because it's not easy how to ensure that becoming more of a fabric of the society, that kind of integration and that recognition of working on site to be recognized as part of the curricula. That's also important. So I think that thinking that need to be revisited again, and need to be integrated more to serve the Industry 5.0.
Thank you. So more integration and basically less theory, but more practice. Sandrine, you mentioned already that it's the whole society that has to adapt to Industry 5.0. Sandrine, are you still there? Sandrine? We seem to have lost Sandrine. Okay, but it doesn't matter. I can raise my question to anyway. I would have asked both of you as well. So Sandrine mentioned the fact that the whole of society has to change, and she's highlighted quite a few of the risks. But how about opportunities? And do you think the opportunities actually differ between the GCC and the EU? Maybe I'll start with you, with Dr. Abdullatif, on this particular aspect.
There's no doubt there are many great opportunities. Now we are dealing with a Generation Z that is very smart and very capable. They have a multitask type of a generation. They have talents. They have access to technology to promote their business from home. They are like naturally entrepreneur. I find them more than the previous generation. So yeah, there are many great opportunities in this generation, but also they get frustrated easily, and they are impatient to a certain extent, and they want to get things done immediately. And so this is where the opportunity is there, but we need to address today the training, the education system to be more meeting their expectation for the Gen Z. So the use of technology is definitely is available, and it's very advanced. But to bring it to our students' level, and the students are more recipient. But to be honest with you, the bottleneck are the academicians themselves, ourselves, that we are a bit delayed because we believe in certain way of in academia that things need to be done this way, through like the traditional exams and assessments and classes, because this is what we kind of need to be rethink. A very valid question, for example, nowadays we should address, why should we build our colleges, universities, or even schools 70–80% of physical classrooms? Why not our university become more of an open lab space to attract students, to engage them socially, interactively, and let us deliver the instruction that we need through an online, through the metaverse, through many other means. And this is where we need to question the traditional academic institutions that's there, and if it serves, in fact, indeed, the Industry 5.0. So, yeah, there are many good opportunities. Students and the Gen Z are the recipient of this model. They are ready, but we need to rethink and how do we bring more excitement to this generation through learning, and bring learning to life rather than becoming more of a boring exercise for our kids and for our students.
Thank you. I have been informed indeed in the meantime that Sandrine had to go as we had expected, but we're very grateful that she could stay with us for a little while. Alessandra, would you agree and about the opportunities mentioned by Dr. Abdullatif, and would you see a few more?
Well, of course, I agree about the multiple opportunities, and let me just mention that I think that the metaverse marketing strategy is really like winning here, because you can see like everywhere in cities that, the students of the future will be able to simulate an operation on a patient in the metaverse, so they could learn, real time and, let's say, hands-on skills. So I think that the marketing strategy here is winning, and I do see the opportunities indeed. For instance, just to take from Dr. Abdullatif was saying about the metaverse. So I do see an opportunity in this digital transformation for the Gen Z for sure, but let's not also forget about adults and also, for instance, aging people. So as European citizens, I also have to think about it, because we are an aging continent and we have to consider that. So there are plenty of opportunities, not only learning opportunities, but really also exchanging opportunities. So we are here in this business forum where international cooperation is, its main responsibility and its main objective. So imagine in the digital world, this international cooperation, this international exchange of experiences, of knowledge, of expertise can happen and can enrich really the global society, because let's think about everyone bringing their own background, their own culture, the way they've learned things. So let's think of everyone really bringing this to the table. I do see the opportunities here, but of course, great opportunities come with greater risks. So we don't have to forget about the risk that this digitalization of our society will bring. And one of the risks is indeed to somehow forget about more adult people and aging people especially. So what I also want to focus on, or what I would like to see in the future actions and initiatives, is really a focus on the inclusiveness of this process and how inclusive this process should be. Let's not forget that we have all different level of knowledge and of experience with digital technologies, and every one of us needs a very tailored training program to understand and to adapt to the new technologies. So I do see this point as a risk, but also as an opportunity if addressed in the right way.
Thank you. We will now check where Christophe is with his graphic harvesting. We will have a look at what he's picked up from our conversation so far. That's going to come up on screen in a minute. I'm very curious to see where he stands. So, yeah, a few elements. Definitely rethink cities. We'll be talking about cities in our panel this afternoon about, later on this morning about places. But yes, definitely a few interesting points there. Aging population, yes, the human aspect, combining the human and the digital. So let's let him continue with that, and we'll all have a look at it over coffee break. I would like to open questions, or to open the floor to you all if you have questions. So feel free now. I mean, I have a few more questions for our speakers, but it would be good to have your contributions to this discussion. No question yet? Yes, please. The gentleman at the front. So can you please introduce yourself and say who would you like to ask the question to?
Thank you, Florence. My name is Ayman Al-Fudaili. I'm from Industrial Innovation Academy from Oman. Maybe my question to Dr. Abdullatif. I don't know if you would agree with me or not, but maybe one of the most important pitfalls we fall in when we try to use the virtual learning and virtual education, that we focused a lot on the how, and we forgot what, because for the last few centuries, we used to change the what, which is what to teach. And the how, it's been always the same. Students come, sit with the instructor, with the teacher, and he will do the personalization, which is the knowledge sharing process, where they will meet with him and they will learn from the instructor. But this is the first time in the history where the how is changing and we keep educating the what, which is the same. In fact, we emphasize on the same curricula for the students, but the mean, the tool, has like totally different. It has changed dramatically. So I think this is the first point. Do you think if we change the what and make it suits the how, will pay off, will lead to better results? I don't know. I'm just questioning. The second point is the reskill and upskill. As you just said, I remember back in 2004, I've participated in the International Telecommunication Union, and they were talking about the digital gap. And they were trying to push everyone to move to the digital world. And all of the countries were striving to do that and working hard to do that. But as you just said, technology, the pace of change in technology cannot be realized. So maybe we need to reach to a stage where we need, again, forget about what and think more about the skills, the skill sets, the reskilling, upskilling methods, and emphasize more and invest more on that, instead of just keep trying to make people, students learn and know more about the technology itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Abdullatif, what we teach versus how we teach it, and reskill or upskill?
Well, thank you, Ayman, for addressing this important question. Yes, we've been looking into the how, which is the pedagogy of delivering instructions in a different way. And this is something maybe with the 2D screen online, and now with the metaverse, we're trying to explore. But I agree with you, the what has not much changed. The what in terms of the contents itself has not been, because again, the issue comes because we as an academician, we believe certain learning outcomes need to be met for certain courses or subjects. And this is why the contents have not been upgraded itself. I think it is more critical today through the concept of metaversity, where we can integrate the theory with the work environment or with the work placement, where students, for example, sitting in a meta class and attending certain, for the 10, 15 minutes, some basic fundamental theory, and then switching immediately to dive into, for example, a human body and see how the heart functioning, or going into a biochemistry lab and see how the molecules in the 3Ds are connected, or go into dismantling an engine, for example. This is in a metaverse is doable because the students, they have access to and the tools to be able to take part of this from the applied nature, not just by watching it through online. And this will give them an advantage to upskill instantly as they learn together. So we bring in learning to life rather than having learning just, again, a boring instruction and it's a one-way communication from a teacher or a faculty to students like the old days. That kind of interactivity will change the way we deliver our instructions, will change the what, will change the how, and will bring excitement to the youth. And more importantly, to conclude with, it will upskill continuously and reskill our graduates when it comes to those kind of competencies. And this is why maybe the advantages through the online, we were able to get our students to learn by accessing all these resources that's available on the internet. And that gives them an advantage, honestly, and make them challenge their teachers and faculties more than rather than the old days. And teaching them those kind of skill set to access information, to learn on their own, and to be able to graduate that professional learner. So by the time, those kind of skills changes and technology changes so rapidly, they will be able to catch up even after graduation. So again, it goes back to the basic fundamental set of skills that need to be embedded, the soft skills, and teaching them how to learn on their own. I think it's more critical, and this is what will build the proper generation of graduates that they will be able to meet the Industry 5.0 requirements.
Indeed. Would you have the same approach, not necessarily about teaching, but training and upscaling versus reskilling, sorry. So upskilling versus reskilling.
Yeah, no, indeed. I wanted actually to also stress the importance of what we teach. I really think it's fundamental to equip people and workers with the ability to think critically towards the technology, because this is the only way they will be able to anticipate the changes, to understand themselves the changes, and in this way embrace the changes that that technologies are bringing to our everyday lives. So this is one way that society, that workers can somehow anticipate the fast technological changes. Technological changes will happen, there will be development, we will take time to understand, but if we have already a set of critical thinking approaches and scheme in our mind, we will be able to understand these developments more, and we will be able to understand how to better align with them and use them. So I just wanted to stress this in conclusion of what Professor Abdullatif was saying. So it's really important to equip people with a set of critical thinking skills. We really need to make them empowered to understand what is going on and how they can best take the opportunity out of it. So this applies to the education system, but this applies as well in businesses and small and medium-sized enterprises. So we really see the need of changing mentality and changing our schemes we were used to before, these disruptions brought by the pandemic.
Do we have another question in the room? Yes, please.
Yeah, just maybe my question to
Hold on. Can I take the mic to make sure that people online hear us?
Of course. My question to Dr. Abdullatif, as mentioned during the session, the curriculums are old-fashioned. I mean, we need to disrupt those very, very, very hardly. The question is, do you think that today business people can also become teachers? I mean, those executives who have the practical experience can also contribute in educating those graduates, because the academic way of doing things today is not helping a lot in progressing the education levels of our students who stick to the old curriculums. What is the importance here of us as business leaders to also help in educating those students through contributing with universities and schools to inject the practical experience, the field experience, which will really top up on what the teachers and the theory is doing to those students?
That feeds into what you were saying earlier, Dr. Abdullatif, about indeed integrating enterprises or industry in general and education, right?
Yes, indeed. In fact, what I would like to emphasize today, the business people has an obligation on the society to educate. I think it's time where we realize that education is not the sole responsibility of certain colleges or universities or even schools. Education is the responsibility of the whole society. And the business people, in fact, they bring in a real cases from the work environment. They bring in the up-to-date skill set into a classroom. I think it is more important, and we've seen today many universities and colleges, they hire more and more adjunct faculty whom are business people who have a profession in certain different areas, different experiences, to come to the classroom. Maybe they need a couple of weeks to how do we engage with the students, certain basic tools to teach. But I think it will bring a huge value to the education system by attracting them. And it is, again, it's an obligation. It's not because pointing fingers that the graduates of universities today, they're not competent enough, they're not qualified enough. We've been hearing so much of this kind of argument from the business side. But and then you ask the question, what was your contribution as a business side? Did you contribute? Did you help the education system to enhance and to bring those values of the competency set of skills to that level? So keeping aside is not fair. Integrating is critical. And in fact, the universities of the future that will have more competent and qualified graduates, the one who will hire, even on a part-time basis, more of business people, more of a professional people who have that kind of skills, and they can contribute to their curriculum and to the improvement of their contents as well.
Indeed. As a final question to both of you, actually, what would be your top recommendations to policymakers and to business leaders in general?
Well, to policymakers, I have a very concrete one, and it's to continue the work on the recognition of macro-credentials at EU and also extra EU level. This is very important to recognize competencies of European citizens and make them let's say, work in every country and for their competencies to be recognized in every business setting. And then I would say like a more general one is really to indeed invest on this kind of public-private partnership where the industry has an active role and has an important role as much as the universities, because industries are giving, the real needs, so what they are needing, so what the education should do, so which are the skills that I should teach to the people to be able to work in the businesses. So keep on investing in this kind of co-design processes of tailored training for this new digital era. These are my two recommendations. Thank you.
Dr. Abdullatif.
I think the academic institutions now are at risk. They are no longer at their comfort zone, because today, if we don't prepare qualified and competent graduates, somebody else will. The industry today is they start to establish their own credentials to bring workers on site that they are competent and they meet their work environment and the work needed. So I think it's today to the decision makers to rethink the education, to ensure that academic institutions no longer operate the traditional way, integrate them more with business sectors, integrate them more with business industry, integrate the technology in our education, because it's more important for the Gen Z, again, bring metaverse part of our education system, bring excitement to learners, and in the same time meeting those set of skills that we are talking about. So the risk is very high. If any academic institutions live in their legacy of having maybe 100 or 200 years old that are very known, that they're very prestigious, it's not going to happen in the next 5 years, because even those high legacy universities, if they don't change the way they deliver instructions and to meet the work environments of those competency skills, they will be out of the game. So it is, academics, again, at risk, need to be rethink again, but again, is the importance of every stakeholder in the society to contribute to that. It's not, again, the academic institutions alone.